Feed your future self with magic internet money.
My inaugural guest is Mr. Not So Fast of Twitter fame, and welcome.
Thanks, Brad. This is cool to be kicking this off, and I'm interested in what your whole sort of angle on podcastery is.
Podcastery. I love it.
If you have any idea of where it's going.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. What I want to do with this podcast is mostly explore long-form Twitter arguments in podcast form with people that I respect.
That's a good idea, because nothing really productive happens in short form, but in long form, you get people that sound crazy or nuts or zealous or overzealous or scammy. Are usually just people with an idea, with an ability to back up their idea and make it look not crazy and fairly sound, but they don't get the chance. And especially if there's a dog pile.
Yeah, I find on Twitter, especially myself, I'll go and look at something I posted when I'm very emotional about like Bitcoin Cash split or something like that. I'll be calling everybody Bcash tards and like just using very unproductive, derogatory terms to people that, well, later on I'll go back and I'll look at them and like think about it from their perspective and understand it from, you know, why they think like this. And they're actually really smart people. And I mean, I'm not saying everybody is a smart person on Twitter, but there's definitely a better way to talk about issues. And Twitter doesn't get the meat of it. So instead of being aggravated about the latest thing that's happening and just kind of blabbing about it on Twitter, I'd like to bring people on to talk with me, and I'm glad we were able to sit down in person for the first one. I was inspired by other podcasters, like Peter McCormick's been doing a lot of in-person shows, and he kind of like nudged me to start my own podcast.
I'm glad that he did. I listened to Peter McCormick and Eric Voorhees on the way over, so
I didn't hear that one yet.
Yeah, it's brand spanking.
That's another thing I want to do is I found that there's so much, the space moves at such a very fast pace that it's very difficult to get all the information synthesized. So I'm actually going to start another podcast, which is summarizing the other podcasts that happened that week.
Probably smart.
So it's going to be like an hour show or like a half an hour show, basically, that just like synthesizes the most important bits of what happened on other podcasts, because I don't have time to listen to them anymore. There's so much information. There's so many people to follow on Twitter. There's so many so much good value going out there, and so many complicated arguments that I need to sort of help understanding.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And perhaps like the more long form discussions that are out there, everybody will sort of listen to whatever they can and then in a trusted way be able to synthesize it and break it down. And if things get too heated in 280 character back and forth discussion, someone can come in and say, oh no, I actually listened to the long form of this. And though their point seems really extreme in the short form, it's actually moderated, and there's a lot of congruence with like what looks like the opposite argument, and the complete at each other's throats type thing can maybe be mitigated over some time.
I think it's just more, it gives you more, maybe people will follow people on Twitter and also in podcast form, and then you get the more nuanced. Because even myself, when I'm talking to someone in real life, I'm definitely not going to use the same language that I'm using it on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You get to edit it and you sit on the toilet for half an hour making one tweet. Yeah. Not like Ari Paul. Ari Paul can like synthesize like a 20 tweet storm while he's got a 5-minute wait in a lineup at an airport, and it's like brilliant.
Yeah,
I'm like sitting on the toilet for half an hour trying to make a joke.
You're composing.
trying to make a trollish tweet to somebody, but I can't do that on podcast format.
Yeah, and well, the other good part of podcasts is like tweets are good for snark and acerbic wit. Is it acerbic? Acerbic.
It smells good.
And you know, if I were to snipe a dig at you in single sentences, like we wouldn't have a very good in-person conversation, but with just a regular back and forth talk like the good old days, you can actually hear where someone's coming from.
A good example of that actually is that recently this week there was a bit of a drama about a couple of things that kind of sparked my interest. One of them was where Peter McCormick had offered for Peter from Bitcoin Unlimited. What's his
Ryzen.
Pete Risen,
Risen.
Yeah. Pete Risen from Vancouver to come on the show and to discuss the negative case for Lightning Network.
Right.
And then Pete immediately was like tweeting, give me some good information to FUD Bitcoin and Lightning Network, basically, is the way it was taken. But actually, it was a pretty logical thing he did. He's going on a show. He wants to prepare. He wants to research. And he was asked to argue the negative case for Lightning Network. So, of course, he's going to ask his followers, like, what should I say? What are the things I'm not thinking about? Because he's not paying too much attention to Lightning Network. And, of course, everybody then blew up. And I had the initial reaction as well. Like, oh, look at this guy fudding Bitcoin and Lightning Network again. But I tried to like objectively stay and watch the arguments play out, and he's been doing these quizzes where he like puts like a loaded question up where it's a negative scenario for the Lightning Network.
Yeah.
But he's like, "What's the answer of this quiz?" And then I was actually trying to answer them, and I'm getting them all wrong because I'm kind of a dunce when it comes to the real technology side of things. I don't understand it like as much as like someone like him does.
Yeah.
But that kind of a conversation I would love to hear on a podcast form, but it's just too bad that you couldn't have like a pro Lightning person and a negative Lightning person and then the podcast guy in the middle. It seems like it's all like one-sided.
And I think the issue with that is, Peter McCormack, he's got the right idea. He's like, I'm doing a lot of talking. I'm conducting discussions about Lightning. A lot of people are very pro with it because that's who wants to talk about it. But we should get someone to poke holes in it too, because it's only going to strengthen or like the long-term development of this protocol. If we have somebody sort of put it through its paces, I mean, devil's advocate is a thing, right? But if you are looking at a Twitter timeline and all you catch is one tweet from Peter McCormack saying, I'm going to interview this guy and he's going to build the case against Litecoin, and maybe haven't been on Twitter for a couple of days because you have a real life, unlike perhaps me, that's all you see. And you're like, how dare he give a platform to attacking what people are working so hard on? And you're missing a massive bite of context as well as intent with that. And people's intent is never quite as bad as as it comes across at first glance. Like I've seen some stuff from Giacomo Zucco that has totally triggered me because he's epic. He's such a good dude. And like he has mostly different positions from what I do. Any snipe on Twitter that he does with like his take and sense of humor is meant to sort of downplay or denigrate a lot of the stuff that I'm interested in. Same thing with the type of stuff that I say. Probably he might, if he were to see it, I don't know if he even like follows me on Twitter, but I'm sure he gets exposed to some stuff here or there. He's probably just like shakes his head and goes, these fucking shit corners working against me. And like, but I'm sure that if he and I were to sit in a room and talk about stuff, I would bet that he and I would agree on 99% of things that we talk about. And we're actually all on the same side. We're just passionate about and interested in what we see is out there and trying to further it in our own individual ways, right?
Well, you've got how many Twitter followers?
Oh, I don't know. Actually, I do know because it hasn't changed since the end of the bull market. It's been a stable ping pong between 147 and 148K.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is 2019. If anyone in the future is listening to this, when he's got 1.5 million followers.
No, that's only Justin's son, man. That's Justin's son is the first man to 1 million crypto Twitter followers.
I gotta assume as well then that guys like Giacomo will come across your content because it's always shown in my feed.
Well, yeah. I mean, he does. I follow him. I'm pretty sure. I mean,
that's
I like seeing what he and everybody else has to say. Like I follow anybody who's smart that I can learn from, basically.
Yeah. To talk about that just a little more with Giacomo's, one of the tweet storms that I first got exposed to Giacomo was when he was replying to Chris Passia about, I can't remember if it was Zcash or Bitcoin Cash, but there was something that he was responding to Chris Passia about it. And then he just like had this like 25 tweet denigration, vitriolic, like, but really funny and smart and made a lot of sense, like tweet storm about why Chris Passia is an idiot, basically, and all the people that think like him are idiots or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm like remembering it, but it was it was an awesome tweet storm. But then I was like, that's how I got introduced to Chris Passy. I never knew who he was before that.
Yeah.
And so I started following him because I'm like, oh, this guy's an idiot. Like, what does he think?
Let's see what he thinks himself next.
So then I watched him on like a podcast with Block Digest where it was like him versus like 8 of the Block Digest people. And he was actually like, you know, when he's on Voice, he's very respectful, he's very smart. He's totally different than what he's on Twitter. When he's on Twitter, it's like it comes across trollish and like he's just trying to destroy Bitcoin and you know what I mean? So I'm interested in getting more of folks like from all different spectrums, because one of the things that I want to do this podcast for, and I guess it's just to make sure that I'm not in an echo chamber and exposing myself to people who are into altcoins or who are not into Bitcoin or whatever. Like, why do you believe that, and what is the reason that you believe that, so that maybe I can take some of that. Because I identify as a Bitcoin maximalist. Yeah. So I hold some altcoins to get more Bitcoin. Yeah. But I believe it's Bitcoin that's going to win in the end. Bitcoin is like the best money, you know, the best hard money type of thing. I believe that's the scenario that plays out. Yeah. But I invest in the space. Like I invest in equity rounds for seed and Series A stage startups now. It's only been recently I've been doing that. Yeah. To get more exposure to the space, because I missed Ethereum, I missed the Ripple run, you know, all these coins that went insane. That, you know, in the end, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, I say, but I'm a value maximalist, really. Yeah, I think everybody is a value maximalist. Like, what are you in Bitcoin for? You're in this to either it's a political thing for you, it's a philosophical thing for you. You're like exiting the system. Yeah. But even if you're doing that, you're going to at some point need to like buy a house for your family, or like, you know, support your family, or have some fun, you know, like people need money. Yeah, it's true. Well, like there's the whole motives are impure if profit is associated with it. And that's not really true. I mean, you know, we don't have infinite time on earth to like get it right and pursue completely pure philosophical ideals in every single case. So like there's a bit of complexity and interplay in terms of your Bitcoin philosophy and what you think about it and what you think about everything else that's going on, and the purity with which Bitcoin was created and how it's the best example of what it can be versus like other projects which are sort of cloning it or aping it or becoming just like a venture token. What does that mean, aping? Like trying to look like it or act like it, or kind of like, yeah, like less than cloning it and more like trying to position themselves adjacent to it as closely as possible. So like plenty of Bitcoin private, there. Like, well, we're Bitcoin, but we're private. Like, you know, that's a really low key example of a clone. And that's again, like snipe and snark that I'm just parroting because it's easy. Well, that one was an obvious case of pump and dump. Like that, of course. Bitcoin private was like, they already did it with Z Classic and they saw the Bitcoin Cash fork. And then they were like, oh, well, let's just give airdrops to people who hold either Bitcoin or Bitcoin Classic or Z Classic, but the Z Classic people get more. So you got to buy Z Classic to get more Bitcoin private. So it was really just a pump and dump for Z Classic. Yeah. No, it's pretty hard to see. And then the guy got kicked out or something like that right away because he was said, let's do this again with Prime Coin or something. Yeah. Just let's pick another little known old altcoin to accumulate easily. 3 times. Let's try it again. Yeah. It's some other. So you got that on one end of the spectrum, Bitcoin, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got just obvious, like not even Bitcoin private, like obvious scams that are securities fraud. You know, it's like complete legitimate scams. The people run off with the money. You don't get any coins. And we can even remove securities fraud from the equation because that adopts a set of like legacy rules that don't really apply to permissionless networks, money networks, right? So like securities fraud is like, it's an easy negative shade to throw at something, but it's not even our own rule set if we're being like core permissionless money network system supporters, right? I mean, we got to interface with that world, but I would call
what everybody likes to call scams, and then that term gets like the blanket of that term gets too big, too much goes under that umbrella, with just like pure plays to trick people into giving you their money.